Shalom, when the star of souls by giving all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Kadash, double honors to the apostles of great most and honors to brothers doing the work of the most in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name of whom the world ignorantly calls God, Jehovah, Yahweh, his real name is Yahweh, and son's true name is Yahushai, and only pray for Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, but in, meaning that, and Sham, meaning names, Yahweh, in the name of Yahushai. Real quick, I just wanted to touch real quick. Just want to touch on this. This is some I quote racist incident. That's like a quote racist incident that happened on Friday between this player here, Jake from Ghana, and which got this individual here, and you notice he's in a wheelchair. Okay, it's just the moment racist Liverpool fan realised what he'd done. Fans tell how wheelchair users shouted slur at Bournemouth's Antoine Semenyo before throwing gum at him. Okay, now someone may say, oh, it's just a football context, whatever, what have you, but it reminded me of this quote here, right, which is from Lyndon B. Johnson. It's a spirit because it's a quote that I've been kind of thinking about a lot recently, right? But it says, if you can, Lyndon B. Johnson, right? It says, if you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket, right? Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you, okay? And the reason why, like I said, it keeps coming up is because he is basically using a whole host of, different rage bait to basically have, these Edomites get annoyed, right? And this is not, you can't really, I haven't really got a better example of this than this guy. He's in a bloody wheelchair, okay? He's in a bloody wheelchair. And this Jake, right, Anton Semenyo, right, I looked up what his wages are, right? This Jake makes 75 grand a week, right? 3.9 million pounds a year, okay? And yet you still have this guy here who appears to be an Edomite, basically quote racially abusing him, right? Just goes to show you that you know that this quote, this first bit is basically is truly in effect. It also goes to show that perpetual hatred, and also just goes to show that we are in our lowest state at the moment, right? This is Ecclesiastes 10:7. This is, I've seen servants upon horses and princes walking as servants upon the earth, right? So right now, here it is, Yasha the he prince power, right? We should be the ones that are in in that position of like what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, we should be the ones that are in the position of being respected and stuff like that. However, right, this right, he's the one that has been put in power over us, right? He's over us at the moment, right? And that's because of our iniquity, right? This is 2 Ezra 6. I'll read into it a little bit. And 54 says, and after these Adam also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, right? And that people will have this saying of, oh yeah, we all come from Adam, etc., 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 right? But then it goes on to say, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. Now we're the chosen, right? However, we're at this point in time, we're at the bottom, right? Which is why you can have what appears to be an Edomite in a wheelchair, right? Basically taking abusing a Jake. Now to play Premier League, right? You're gonna have to be of at least a decent physical prowess, physical stature and stuff like that. You got to be pretty decent to play in the Premier League, right? Which is why it's one of the things they say it's one of the hardest leagues in the world. Okay, yeah, you've got you've got this, right? Once again, we just we're the chosen, but this is just the terms of our punishment at the moment, right? It says, all this have I spoken before thee, O Lord, because thou madest the world for our sakes. As for the other people which also come of Adam, thou hast said that they are nothing, but be like unto spittle, and is likened the abundance of them unto a drop that falleth from a vessel. So, you're basically seeing that, okay? The fact that the Lord has reputed, is that the right word? But basically, the Lord has said that these heathens ain't nothing, right? However, they are the ones that basically are lording over us at the moment. Right, as it goes on to say in verse 57, it says, "And now, O Lord, behold, these heathens, which have ever been reputed as nothing, have begun to be lords over us and to devour us. But we, thy people, whom thou hast called thy firstborn, thy only begotten, and thy fervent lover, are given into their hands." Right, because you think, any of the heathen nations are going to be able to disrespect us in the kingdom. Hell no. Right, that will be dealt with summarily, right, by by different means. I'll say it the YouTube friendly way. Right, it says, "If the world now be made for our sakes, why do you not possess inheritance with the world? How long shall this endure?" Right, those that the Lord has opened, those whom the Lord's eyes have opened. Let me try. Yeah, I think I said that right. Those whose eyes the Lord hath opened, right? When they see, yeah, I mean, you just laugh at it, right? Because this is just E in his right spirit, his right mind. Right? I was about to read in Ezekiel 35, right? Those people, this is how they, it's like I lost my trail of thought, Salak here, but let me grab this, right? Because I said I was going to get it right. Ezekiel 35 and 5, right? It says, "Because I had a perpetual hatred," right? Which is what I wanted, right? This is that perpetual hatred. We weren't meant to get along, right? Jake do their best to try and get along with this Edomite, right? But we weren't we weren't ever designed to be to get along, right? We're enemies right from the womb, right? This is Genesis 3 and 15, right? It says, "And I'll put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed, right? It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel," right? So since then, we have had basically issues, and once again, it was always designed that we would have issues with these Edomites. Okay, because this serpent here represents, basically what this Edomite would be, right? So it says, "And I'll put enmity between thee and the woman." So really, he's in his right spirit, right? He's in his right spirit. Should he be what you call it, Edomite? He's in his right spirit to not like Jay, right? It's really Jay that is constantly trying to get approval, from what you call it, from these different heathens, right? Which is why, for instance, the precept that's coming to mind, right, is this in Jeremiah 2:33, right? It says, "Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love?" Right, and that's Jake through and through. Right, Jake is always trying to get in on what the heathen are on, right? Jake is always trying to basically get acceptance of these heathens by doing, the ways of the heathens, right? When Jake, become friends of Muslim, we always say they become the most Muslim of Muslims, right? Goes on to say, "Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways." So that's it, right? Jay, just be trimming their ways to try get approval from these heathens, but these heathens don't like us, right? Now, it's a thing where it's like, what was the saying? I forget the saying, but it's one of them ones where it's just like the children of Israel, we're the best. The heathens, they can deep down, they know it, right? But right now, they're enjoying the season in which they have power over us. Because once again, in the kingdom, no one's coming up to children of Israel and trying to usurp authority, right? It's trying to disrespect, right? Like I said earlier on, it will be dealt with summarily. Okay, so we read this. Let's finish this now, right? Ezekiel 35 and 5 says, "Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and I shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. If thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee." Okay, because E has basically shown his hatred and is going to show his hatred, right, by way of shedding blood, right? Once again, E is going to keep pushing these Edomites to basically he's going to keep pushing these Edomites to basically hate Jake more and more, right? To really, or rather, to tap into who they really are, right? As we read in those two precepts, they've never liked Jake, right? And they're not meant to like Jake, okay? So, that's what it is, right? Yeah. So, like I said, I just thought that was kind of uh, a funny example, right? Proving this statement true, right? Because once again, you got this guy here in a wheelchair, right? You know, abusing this Jake here, not in a wheelchair as an example, an athlete, right? Scored twice against Liverpool, you know, the current champions of England, right? You know, who earns 75 grand a week. Okay, once again, just showing you these heathens, they don't, what was it? You know, you can be smart, you're just a smart nigga. You can be rich, you're just a rich nigga. And that's it, right? It's what we seek for the kingdom, right? So, as always, Lord's will I was edifying. Till next time, we say shalom.